off your engine!
Redemption Gabe yet says, this has got to be the worst design. I opened the hood on a 2017 Volvo S60 and there's no dipstick. You have to check it electronically. What a stupid idea. Well, yeah, you know, Mercedes-Benz did that ages ago too. But then the Mercedes-Benz owners got so mad that they went back to putting dipsticks in because they said, we paid all this money for a car, we can't even check the oil. You got to trust the electronic system. Not that great of an idea. You can't see the oil, so you don't know how dirty it is because you can't check it with a dipstick, just electronically. It's just another stupid idea by, in this case, they all seem to be Scandinavian type people. The Germans, the Swedes, that, you know, oh, we can make the technologies this way, so we will. It's stupid. Simple thing. You want to have simple things like that. It's just because they can. And then, of course, they can rip people off because when the systems break, then they won't change their oil. It'll be low. The engine will wear. Then when it wears out, they figure, oh, they'll sell them another car. Well, me, if I ever got stuck with some stupid car that didn't have an oil dipstick in it, and it ever went out, I would never buy another one. I'd find a company that has dipsticks in their cars, and I would buy one of those. There are still cars out there that have automatic transmissions that have dipsticks. A lot of them got rid of them, but there's still some out with dipsticks. If I was buying one, I'd buy the one with a dipstick. I wouldn't buy the one that didn't have a dipstick. WW2015 says, I got my 15 Ford Fusion with a 2.5 at the dealer for warranty. My transmission was shifting hard. They checked it out, said it was 2 quarts low, and they did a software update. Do you think the transmission is okay? It had 58,000 miles on it. Make sure you have this all written down on a bill because they said it was 2 quarts low. Unless the transmission was all wet and it leaked out and you would see it dripping on the ground, that would have meant that they built the vehicle incorrectly and did not put enough fluid in it at the factory. And I've seen that happen. If that's the case, you want to keep that receipt because if the transmission goes out in the future, you say, you guys didn't fill it up with fluid when you built the car. Then you put 2 quarts in later when it had 58,000 miles. And if it does break the transmission, I would take it to Ford and say, you're giving me another transmission and I'm not paying for it because you built it with an incorrect amount of fluid. Because there's no way it would be 2 quarts of fluid low. It would be leaking all over the place. There would be fluid everywhere. And if it was dry, they didn't build it right in the first place. Toby Ann's Moki, $72 says, I got a 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4.7. How can I improve the gas mileage? It has 144,000 miles. Well, buy a different vehicle if you want good gas mileage. That is a Jeep Grand Cherokee, big heavy vehicle. They are gas hogs. You bought the wrong vehicle if you want gas mileage. You shouldn't have bought that vehicle in the first place. There's really not much you can do. I mean, if there's any excess weight, take it off. Make sure the tires have the right amount of air. Use the lightest oil viscosity possible for a little bit better gas mileage, but you're never going to get good gas mileage in that thing, especially if you drive in town. Now on the highway, if you drive 55, 60, top gear, that's the best it's ever going to get, but when you're in town, you're lucky if you get in the low teens gas mileage on that vehicle. It is a gas hog machine, and it's got all those mileage on it, so it's worn out. It's going to get even worse gas mileage because it's old. As an engine wears, it gets worse gas mileage because the pistons wear out, the valves wear out, and it's not going to run as efficiently. But don't ever expect good gas mileage with the 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Unless they come up in the future with an electric version, they're always going to get bad gas mileage. They're big, giant, heavy vehicles. All the big, giant, heavy vehicles. Even the Toyotas, they're big giant vehicles like Sequoia, they get crappy gas mileage too because they're big and they're heavy. You get something big and heavy, you're not going to get good gas mileage. Coyote PK says, I'm thinking about getting a Scion FRS. Would it be okay to get it used? Sure, they're well-made cars. And, you know, from my experience of working on them, all the ones I ever worked on were still made in Japan, where they make the cars the best. Open the door, look inside, and if it says made in Japan and the mechanic says it's good, buy it. They can last forever if you take care of them. They just don't make Scions because it was a marketing mistake by Toyota. Toyota had a fantastic name. Why on earth would they change the name to Scion when they already had a good name? I understand why Ram is now its own brand, because Chrysler and Dodge have a horrible reputation. So now, oh, they're Rams. They're not Dodge or Chryslers, they're Rams. I can understand getting away from the Dodge Chrysler name, but why, oh, why would you want to get away from the Toyota name that has a very good reputation and make something called Scion? I do understand why they made Lexuses, because back in the day, in the late 80s, they thought what American is going to spend all this money for a Toyota? Okay, we'll call them Lexuses and charge more, and that's what they did, and it worked. But Scions were a little lower price car. Why would you want to get rid of the reliable name Toyota? They should have asked old Scotty. Could have saved themselves a lot of money. Giovanni Sanchez says, I'm looking to buy a 2016 smart car. Is the engine good? All right, they're basically giant go-karts. And they don't make smart cars anymore except electric ones. They don't make them with gasoline or diesel engines. If it's got the gasoline engine, not so great. They're a little bitty 3-cylinder piles of crap. Don't put out much power. So, now if it's an electric one, yeah, they're well made. I had one the other month. I was driving around. A friend let me borrow it. It was fun. And that's all they're making is electric cars now. So it's going to be a problem getting parts for the gasoline and diesel engine ones because they're not making them anymore. So if you want a toy and you get it cheap, go ahead. But don't think it's going to last long, and you're going to have problems getting parts as time goes on. Jacob Ellison said, what's the best way to learn mechanics? Like everything else, hands-on. I learned from my grandfather. He was a mechanic. I watched. He said, I'm not going to teach you anything, but you can watch. So I didn't care. I never listened to people anyway, so I just watched and learned it that way. If you can get a job where they train you at night, don't just go to a school for training, because that's BS. And then when you get out, you get a practically minimum wage slave job somewhere where they'll hardly pay you anything. You're better to have a job, learn on the job training, and learn after the job too for what you want to specialize in, transmissions or electronics or whatever you do. But just plain school, it's kind of a waste of money. You get out, you get a crappy job, and the schools don't train you that well anyway. Onasia says, can a vacuum leak make my engine not start right? It certainly can if it's big enough. If you get a big enough vacuum leak, the engine won't spray the right amount of gasoline because the sensors in your car measure everything. And if it's got a giant vacuum leak, it will have too much air running into the system. And that will make it have too much air, not enough fuel, and it won't start. When a car is cold, ice cold, it needs extra fuel and less air. And if it's getting too much air, yes, it might not start if it's a really big vacuum leak. If it's a small one, it'll start up, but then it might stall out unless you keep your foot on the gas. But if it's really big, yeah, it won't start at all. Mario Herrera says, should I get an F-150 2001 Harley-Davidson pickup truck? They were well-made trucks. Now, it's 19 years old. So, have a mechanic like me check it out. But if they check it out and say it's good, go ahead and buy it. I've had customers with them. They were great trucks. They had to pay Harley-Davidson a whole bunch of royalty money to use the name Harley-Davidson and have the little stamp stuff on the seats and stuff. But they were solid, reliable trucks. My customers with them all loved them. Now, it is a pickup truck. A lot of guys beat the heck out of them. So make sure you have a guy like me check it out before you buy it, because you want to make sure it's not all worn out. But if he says it's okay, yeah, they were great trucks. Basically, back then, they were making them better. Edgar Gomez says, what do you think of a Nissan Frontier? They're not bad trucks. Now, especially used, you get a Nissan Frontier a lot cheaper than you're going to get a Toyota Tacoma. You might pay 3 times what you pay for a Frontier to get a Tacoma. Frontiers aren't bad trucks. They'll go 140, 150,000 miles. They're often trouble-free. So if you get one that's lower mileage, it can be a great truck. Or if you get one that's got 140,000, you can pick it up for nothing. If it still runs and shifts, it might last a while. If I was buying a brand new truck, I'd buy a Toyota Tacoma because they can run forever and you wouldn't have to think about it. But the Frontiers do cost a lot less, and they're decent trucks, especially with the 4-cylinder. I wouldn't mess with the V6s because I got customers that had Frontiers with the V6s had a lot of problems. But the 4-cylinder engine, no, they didn't have any problems. Lionel Lara says, what about a Taurus SHO 98? Run away from that car. That show, the engine in that thing was a Yamaha designed engine. The parts cost a fortune. Many of them are not available today. It was a very fast vehicle, yes, but when they broke, they cost a fortune. Now, the problem was it had that souped-up Yamaha designed engine, but it had a crappy Ford transmission. And a lot of times, they'd burn the transmissions out because the engine had too much power for the transmission. Now, if you want one as a toy, mechanic checks it out, and it shifts good and runs good now, go ahead, don't pay much for it. They're not particularly worth anything. Who knows, one day it might become some kind of a collector's item because it's got the Yamaha designed engine. But you do have to have it checked out. And don't pay too much today because generally something's going wrong with them, all that power. And then when you have to get parts, good luck finding them on one that old. A lot of them you can't get anymore. Running at Altitude said, what do you think of the new Toyota Venza? All right, well, I like the old Toyota Venza, and they stopped making them. It was more of a marketing thing, and now they're bringing them back. I'll say what I think about it when a customer buys one or Toyota gives me one and I road test it. So if you're listening, Toyota, feel free to send me a Venza to try out, and I'll drive it around for a week. I thought they should have never gotten rid of them in the first place because I've got customers with them, and they're all happy with them. Well, now they make them again. But I have to reserve judgment until they've been out, I work on them, and I road test them myself. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.